Hello everyone, this is Agile Leaders episode 9. We are having our guests Diana and Diana Larsen and Steve Ollier. Today we are going to talk about Agile Fluency model. We are having the creator of this model and practitioner of this model, and I mean Steve. I would like to introduce you my colleague Burak. As all of you know, he's my co-presenter. Hello, Burak. Welcome.
Hello, Barış. Before beginning our session, I have a little reminder. If you have questions to Steve and Diana, please use Agile Leaders ST hashtag on Twitter, and we will directly ask the questions, Diana and Steve. I think we can start, right, Barış?
Yeah.
First of all, Diana, hello again.
Hi.
Can you tell us briefly about your professional background?
Well, I'm an old person, so I have a long professional background. My career really started with working in organizations to help develop people, and it quickly turned into a focus on helping teams find the right work process design for their work. And because I worked primarily with teams in technical areas, that led me into IT and software development, and then because of my interest in work design and how work is accomplished, then I got introduced to Agile. And so for the past 15 years or so, I've been working primarily with teams in organizations and that want to be the most effective they can be. And in my company, FutureWorks Consulting, what we believe is that everyone at every level in the organization should have the opportunity to love their work and feel like they have the best job ever. And that when that is happening, the company is successful and productive, and the customers are happy, and it all works really well together. And so that's really the focus of my work. Agile, I think, is a way that helps me get to that end goal of people being really satisfied at work.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve, first of all, welcome to our session. I want to ask the same question to you. Can you briefly introduce your background for us?
Yeah, sure. I started my career as a software developer. I was always interested in developing software, and I worked writing C code, C++ code, Java code for many years. I also had some positions where I served as kind of the mid-level technical manager of groups and things like that. But I kept going back to developing software. Until I was working for a company which was the very opposite of your best job ever that Diana talks about. It was the worst job ever. And I also had begun to hear about this thing called Scrum, and I thought, this Scrum doesn't sound like anything I want to ever be associated with. But the company will pay for me to go to Scrum training with Jeff Sutherland, so I'm going to go. And I'm going to learn how bad Scrum is. So come back and convince everyone not to do Scrum. But I got to the training with Jeff, and after the first day, it began to dawn on me that what we were talking about might actually be the solution to a lot of the problems we were facing. We had been, one reason it was the worst job ever, we'd been working for years and never released the first version of our software. And I thought, here's something that could help. So I came back from that so excited about Scrum. I found a job where I could work with some of the best Scrum people in my area to learn to be a Scrum master, and then I kept going. So then for the last several years I've been working as an independent consultant, coach, and trainer. Now I go around and I talk to people about how, again, like Diana said, how they can make their job better. And so I really love working with people and developers and managers and leaders about, how we can have better jobs and also how we can deliver better results to actually deliver results with our software.
So thank you, Steve. Then I would like to start with the history of Agile Fluency model. As most of the people who are following us right now knows that the Agile Fluency model is created by you and James Shore. So what led you to create such model?
Well, Jim and I worked together on a number of projects, and both of us had some of the same experiences where early on in Agile we would visit teams and they would say they were having, very satisfying work, the best job ever, and then over time we started noticing that more and more teams on what they thought were successful Agile adoptions or transitions were saying, well, the best they were getting was that their job wasn't as bad as it used to be. And they weren't saying it was the best ever anymore. And we began to wonder about that. And we also began to notice that that there was a lot of conversation about people weren't getting the benefits from Agile, even organizationally, that they expected to get. And so we began to look around and say, well, what's coming from that? And one of the things that we thought was contributing was the fact that it seemed like people had this idea in mind that there was only one way to do Agile, and success only looked like one thing. And if you weren't getting that, then you weren't really being Agile. And that didn't really match the experience that we had had with the teams that we'd worked with. And so it was actually triggered by a workshop that we were working on called The Art of Agile. It was based on Jim's book, The Art of Agile Development. And we noticed that that as we were teaching it, people needed to hear about things in different ways, and that gave us some clues that they needed different solutions. They needed really different ways of thinking of Agile as a solution. So we began experimenting and taking our ideas to different review groups and conferences, and we'd say, here's what we're thinking about so far, and we would get some feedback from them. And we just kept refining and refining until we landed on what's the Agile Fluency model now, which says really, there's not just one kind of Agile that's the right, it's not one size fits all, that there really are different ways and different and it's not about the methodologies, but it's about the benefits and outcomes and the way we're practicing Agile that really needs to be different in different situations. And it looked like there were about 4 different varieties of that. And so that's what we put together in the model. And once we had that, we noticed that it became, before then we heard a lot about, well, how do we convince the rest of the organization to go Agile? And now, once we had the model, then it was the rest of the organization could understand much more clearly what they were investing in and what benefits they were hoping to get back. And so that really was our motivation. It was to develop a way to talk about Agile that would fit people who had different situations and different real needs for outcomes from it.
Thank you. Steve, can you please explain in detail what is Agile Fluency to our viewers?
Okay. Well, maybe I should tell how I'm using the Agile
Okay.
Fluency
Oh,
model,
it's
or how I've used it. I mentioned I went to work for a company who did Scrum really well, and I did that because I wanted to learn how to be a really good Scrum Master. And over time, I became internal Agile coach, and we began to see that we were having a bit of a problem. And what we saw was the company had learned to do Scrum so well that they weren't ready. No, the teams weren't ready to inspect and adapt, and really go to another level. So Scrum works for us. Scrum works well, and we don't want inspect and adapt to take it further. So we're doing the company was doing very good, very basic Scrum, and I would say they were working at at the first level of the Agile Fluency model. Then I met Diana, had dinner with Diana, and she was telling me about the Agile Fluency model and how there's several different parts of the Agile Fluency model, several different stages, so to speak, and that gave us first basically an understanding of where we could go next, because it was clear from our customers and from people within the company that we needed to go someplace beyond where we were. And so the Agile Fluency model gave us a way to understand where we could go. And later, when I was coaching at a large telecommunications firm, I had heard that, this company will never be Agile. So this sounds like, do I want to work coaching at a company that will never be Agile? Because people were telling me this. But when I got there, I heard the people, actually saying, I heard the developers saying, we've worked for this company for 15 years, and this is the best time we've ever had on our job. We're more productive now. We've been doing Scrum for 2 months, and it's really made a change for us. And what I realized thinking about Agile Fluency, maybe that is where they need to be, a one-star level of fluency might be exactly where they're reaching. And rather than thinking like mini coaches, they have to go to some high level of Agile. Working at the one-star level could be just great for them, and that helped my attitude working with the company to really appreciate where they were and to be able to tell people, it's not that they can't be Agile, it's they can be Agile this way because that's what's good for them. Although later, continuing to work with the company, I found out they also had a goal to go further. The management wanted to take it further, so we had a way to talk about that, how we would go, how we could go to additional levels. I think that's how we've used. I also use that when I go into new coaching assignments to talk to people. I think maybe we'll talk about that later in the call.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Diana, I would like to know what are the key benefits of this model to people who uses it?
Well, the benefits of the model is really helping to understand where the organization wants to put their investment to get what kind of benefits from their teams. So maybe we should describe the model a little bit. It is a model that we have characterized as a path or a road, and the idea is that depending on where you want to go on the road, you're going to put, different amounts of gas in the car. I mean, so you're going to make different investments in order to get to where you want to go, and that different, like Steve was saying, different organizations have different destinations that they'd like to get to along this road, you know, one of the things I say a lot when I'm not familiar enough with the geography of Turkey, I guess, but if we think about the Danube, I guess, if what I want is to see the Hagia Sophia, then I need to go all the way to Istanbul down the Danube. But if what I want is to hear beautiful Mozart music, probably I want to stop in Vienna, and there's no need for me to go the rest of the way, right? And so it's the same with the fluency model. We talk about that the first way that teams tend to become effective with Agile is what we call focus on value. And that really is when an organization needs to be able to see the work that the team is doing, know that the work is focused on producing the highest value stories first, and that they know how to work collaboratively to do that, and that the organization can see the work clearly enough that they can choose to shift direction if that's the information that they're getting in terms of what the market is telling them or whatever. And that requires a certain kind of investment that has to do with really helping the team develop, helping the product owners understand how to talk about value with the teams so the teams can be working on the highest value things. And, the team is probably needing some coaching, particularly if it was a group of individual contributors before. They're going to need to learn how to work collaboratively in that way. And that's the investment. And like Steve said, there are a lot of organizations where that really is as much Agile as they need. They're so happy with those benefits, and that's all they need. So they don't have to go further down the river, right? In other instances, that's not quite enough. Some web-based services and things like that need to be able to deliver much more frequently and deliver with very low level or no defects, because they can't afford to spend any time on reworking their software. They need to be able to deliver rapidly and know that that code is clean and that they can keep building new features, because people, particularly in web environments, are really expecting that. So that we call the stop along the path. We call that 2-star or deliver value. And the benefits that the organization gets there is that they know they are always able to ship on the market cadence, always able to ship what the customer wants when they want it, and that they can know that they're not going to have to spend a lot of time reworking software, that they're not, they're producing things that are clean, and so it's sustainable. And if that's what you need, if you need to make sure that the code you are delivering is getting to the customers when they need it, and then it's sustainable, and you can keep delivering new features without having to worry about a lot of technical debt or a lot of rework, then you invest in that, and that investment has to do with all the things that you did for the first step, but then also helping the team get the kind of technical practices and continuous integration environments and the DevOps connections that they need in order to be functional there. And then there's a couple more steps along the path, but it's that the benefits and the investments change depending on the needs of the organization, and that's what really helps the organizations understand what's expected of them, what they can expect from the teams, and it just makes for a better workplace for everybody.
I think one thing that's kind of interesting when we think about the stars is that it turns out that Scrum and Kanban as well are very good tools for allowing the team to learn to function at a 1-star level of fluency. And that may be exactly where the team needs to go. However, the the tools that really help a team learn to reach the 2-star level of Agile fluency are the so-called XP practices and the software craftsmanship practices help the team get to 2-star. And then you mentioned there's other levels. The 3-star level is actually optimizing value. And there you start seeing things like Lean Startup, Lean Startup Management 3.0. These sort of things are really great for helping teams and companies learn at the 3-star level.
Yeah, Agile UX and Agile UI really come in there too.
Yes.
At that level, yeah.
Maybe the other thing to mention is that when we're talking about Fluency, we're talking about choosing the target that you want to get to and working there. So that doesn't mean do Scrum first alone and then do software craftsmanship. If your goal is 2-star, you should begin working at everything we believe at the same time. Although you will more than likely, we believe, master focusing on value with Scrum or Kanban or whatever your choice is before you master the craftsmanship.
Yeah, and that comes from observing a lot of teams following that pattern. Yeah.
Very nice. Steve, as you mentioned, there are some stars or parking lots in Agile Fluency. Can you give some more detail about this? What are these stars and what they are mean?
Sure. Diana mentioned some of the stars already. Parking lots, I had a good chuckle with parking lots because parking lots makes me think of going somewhere and just sitting, parking, just sitting. And I don't think of the model quite that way, but it's an interesting thing to look at. So Diana mentioned the stars. The first star means the team learns to focus on value. The second star means the team actually learns to deliver value. The third star means the team is able to optimize value. And there's a fourth star, which is kind of Agile Nirvana, which is the team and the company optimize the whole system for value. And we primarily focus on the first 3 stars. The companies that are going to the 4 stars, they're really on their way, and we love to talk to them. But we're really focusing ourselves on, at least I am, more on the 3 stars, which could also be Agile Basics, sustainability. The first star is Agile Basics. The second star is making Agile sustainable. The third star is the promise of Agile. What's very interesting, I mean, James Shore says this, the coaches around, we go into a company and we talk about the promise of Agile, and we sell to the company the promise of Agile, and then we deliver Scrum training, which is actually the basics of Agile, and we wonder why the companies say, oh, yeah, where's the rest? So again, these stars help us think about what we're bringing into the company and where is the rest, how to get to the promise. Now, the parking lot's a good metaphor because Diana wrote about the parking lot once, and that was in the sense, if you want to visit a recreational park, there's several stops along the way. You can take your car and put it in the parking lot, and that's the first stop. So that's the basics of getting to the park. If the only thing you really need to do is park your car, great, you got it. But many people going to the park go a little bit further. So maybe they go to the playground with the children. And if you're at the park with your children, that's probably a really good place to go. Although many other people want to continue past the playground to the sports arena. And if playing sports, playing football is your thing, that's probably the best place for you. But it's actually possible to keep going till you reach the hiking trails. And if that's the sort of activity you like, if that's hiking is what you want, then maybe that's where you need to aim for, is to get to the hiking trail. So I think that's that's where some of the parking lot idea came from. It's a metaphor for being finding the place where you need to be, and being glad that you're there.
Yeah, actually, I read that parking lot metaphor in one of the articles on InfoQ, or
yeah.
So maybe it's better to say it's the stars on the Agile Fluency model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think another point there is that that a lot of times it gets confused, about the stars get confused about that's some sort of you know, like gold stars for the team kind of thing, like, you know, like earning stars or something like that. And that's not really how we meant it at all. And it's actually a lot more accurate to think of those stars as representing how much investment is the organization making in helping their teams be successful. And you know, if you want that focus on value level, just investing in some Scrum training and making sure there's a coach available for the team, that, you know, that's probably all enough, or a lot of the investment you want to make, helping the product owners understand their role. But if you want the benefits of 2-star, then you're going to have to invest more. You're going to also have to invest in making sure that the team has the technical practices and things like Steve was talking about. And so thinking of those stars more in terms of investment in getting to success is a really more accurate way, I think, of characterizing it. And every organization has to balance what benefits do we want versus what trade-offs and investments can we make, and finding, you know, a part of the job of managers and an organization is finding the right balance for their organization. So we found that the model is really useful for teams in understanding how they want to develop and what they need to do next and so on. But it's also, in a different way, very valuable for managers to think about those investments and trade-offs that they need to make.
Great. So I think the team's most valuable assets are their time. So they need to invest in time to going through these stars, right? So I think there should be some, or maybe you can tell us about how much time the teams need to progress through these stars.
Right. What we have found is that there's a range of times that seem typical, and it has a lot to do with how much has the team already done before they begin to look at this. And in general, what we've seen is it takes a team from about 2 to 6 months. If they're first forming a team and they've never really worked together before, it takes them about 2 to 6 months to get to feeling pretty solid in those basics, or those fundamentals of Agile. That is the focus on value, or the 1-star. 2-star takes a little longer. It's because of building those good, solid engineering practices and stuff. That takes more practice and more time, and that is somewhere between, like 4 to 18 months. That can take quite a bit longer. The 3-star we see that from maybe a year to 3 years, depending on what the other constraints are, how much volatility and churn is going on in their organization. All those things make a difference, but it's a much longer investment. And of course, when you first start on any of these things, you get a little drop in productivity and have to have the patience to get through that so that you really begin to see the benefits at the end of that time. So, it's somewhere between a 2 or 3 month and a 3-year journey for most teams, depending on how far they want to go and what's the right place for them.
Okay, very nice. Steve, according to both of your explanations, can we represent Agile Fluency model as an Agile maturity model or not?
Yeah, my first reaction was, oh no, Agile Fluency feels better to me when I hear it. It somehow sits better with me to think of Agile Fluency rather than maturity model. Maturity model sort of seems like something. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I would say, besides my reaction there, I would say no. I would say the Agile Fluency model is not a maturity model, because when we think, superficially, it maybe has some things in common with the maturity model, but when we think about a maturity model, at least I'm thinking about a set of criteria that you set out to achieve to become mature, and there's some endpoint that says now we're mature. So there's also steps along the way of a maturity model, but the goal is to become mature. And the Agile Fluency model is, I think, different. The Agile Fluency model first is a representation first of what Dan and James observed with talking about many people, and when they showed the model to me, I was like, oh yes, I'm observing that too, and many people have that reaction. So it's not a set of criteria to become mature, but it's a description of how we've observed teams react. And most importantly, as we keep saying, the goal is not to become to reach a certain level of the maturity model. The goal is to find what type of Agile is best for you, and really concentrate on that and be happy there.
In some ways, I feel like at each of the 4 descriptions that we have of how teams might be agile, it's like you can become fully mature at each of those stops along the path. You can become a fully mature, focus on value team if that's what your organization wants and needs, and that is its own challenge, right? But then you could also become fully mature as a deliver value team, as a 2-star team, and when we used the stars, we knew it was going to be problematic, and that would mean different things to different people, and I think that has led to some folks thinking of it as a maturity model, because, well, who wouldn't want 3 stars more than 2 stars or 4 stars more than 2 stars? But that's not really how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I was working with a group of folks in Munich. I was talking to them about the Agile Fluency model, and this group in Munich was, I believe, very much into the concept of maturity models, and they were really driven to check off certain boxes on their maturity model. And when we started talking about the fluency model, it was like a light bulb went off over their head, and they started to say, well, actually, we've been focusing on checking these boxes off, but what's really going to be valuable for us is to get our engineering practices into place and deliver, and that's what our company needs. So that was a fun experience to watch that.
Yeah, great. So people can use then this Agile Fluency model as their investment framework, maybe we can say like that, and when they're going through the stars, and they can plan their investments in terms of money and time or other parts, and they can go through these stars. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's a team investment too in what capabilities do we want to acquire as a team, and how are we going to invest our time and our professional development efforts in getting there as well. And we hope that is supported by by the larger organization, but sometimes a team can manage some of that on their own, and be able to, if they can. I think the model can hold up a mirror to say, this is where your organization needs you to be. This is where you can see yourselves now. Observe what you are contributing, and that gives some good clues about what you might want to look at next. And maybe it's the how do we slice stories and help the product owner really define valuable stories, or could be anything. Yeah.
Great. And in Turkey, some of the companies started some agile transformation kind of studies at their organization. Actually, based on your experiences, what are the key problems at such transformation journeys, and maybe we can bind this with Agile Fluency model, and how this model can help them to do this transformation healthy.
Well, what was it? One of the great authors, Chekhov or somebody, said, all happy families are all happy in the same way, and unhappy families are all unhappy in different ways. So there are some similarities across teams, of course, but there are also some very real differences. So the challenges aren't always the same in every organization. It sort of depends on the initial conditions that you find there. Very hierarchical organizations often have difficulties with the ideas of teams needing to make their own decisions about how they do the work. The organization gets to say what work they want done, but then leaving it to the teams for how they're doing the work is critical in teams really learning, in team members really learning to work together as a team. They have to have that much autonomy in order to do that. So that can be a challenge. In other organizations, I see a huge challenge around the organization doesn't really understand what value is, or what features are going to give the most value, business value and customer value. And so they have a very difficult time then communicating that to the team, and so the team knows what to work on. So that can look very different. Another challenge I see that actually is sort of comes in even before the model is in hiring practices. I mean, are you even bringing the right people into the organization who have the right skills to be able to produce any kind of software? Until you've got a good group of people who can write software, it doesn't matter if you're Agile or not. You have to at least be able to do that. And so I think those are the big ones, though. I think is that the nature of the way Agile works kind of requires a loosening of the very rigid hierarchical command and control ways that some organizations have been functioning. And then the other thing is that it demands a much greater awareness on the part of the organization about what really does value mean. And then that gets down into things like cost of delay, and not only what's my customer going to like and what level of quality do they want, but how frequently do they want it? Are there some how do I tell which stories are more valuable than other stories? And sometimes some stories are only valuable if we deliver them early, and later on they have reduced value. So really grappling with that and understanding that is a big challenge for a lot of organizations, and Agile teams need that in order to be able to do what they do. So they need clarity around that value, and that's that's a big challenge in a lot of organizations. I don't know, Steve, maybe you've seen some other patterns of that. In terms of his question about typical challenges.
Yeah. I would reiterate what you said, and what I've realized when going into many organizations that are at the beginning of the transformation, how really difficult it turns out to be to learn to focus on value, because until this point, the company has been focused on a command and control type situation where the managers pass the orders down for the developers to execute. And when the managers are passing the orders down for the developers to execute, the developers don't really have to act like a team. They're a group of people who sit together and each execute their orders. And so it's a huge learning to learn how to work as a team and focus on value. So that's one of the challenges I keep seeing, and what I love to be able to do is, as I'm working with them, is to just repeat that phrase over and over again. How do we focus on value? Let's look at how we focus on value and make that, like you said, the model holds up a mirror. To hold that mirror up, how do we focus on value? Of course, we can also talk about the other areas, because actually delivering value is also a huge challenge. Because rarely, at the beginning, most transformations, the team does not have great engineering practices. So actually, that's quite a challenge, and that's another area where the model can help, because we can start talking about the difference between focusing on value and delivering value, and we can look at the things that we need to do to introduce the engineering practice to deliver value. And now when we get to the promise of Agile, there's a lot of changes that occur with integrating the business into the team, so the team is able to make business decisions. And so that's also a huge problem. Companies aren't ready to do that. But if we can talk about that using the model, that companies can also start beginning to get accustomed to the idea and start making the change that are required to bring the business into the team.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to wave your hands and say, "Oh, we need servant leadership in our organization." But what is that? What does servant leadership look like for your organization? The model helps with that too.
Very, very nice for your information. We are nearing the end of our conversation. I want to ask a question to Steve. We know that you and Diana will be in Istanbul in May to conduct an event. Can you give some information to our viewers about Agile Fluency Model Workshop?
Sure. It's something I'm really excited that we can bring this to Istanbul. And by the way, I'm just really looking forward to being in Istanbul. It's something that a city I've not yet been, and I'm just looking forward to discovering this city, because the pictures are beautiful. I've always wanted to visit. But the workshop itself, the name Agile Fluency Model is in the title, but I'd like to think about what we're going to deliver besides the Agile Fluency Model, the results that we're going to bring. So the results of the workshop is that we want to work with leaders, product owners, project managers, scrum masters, and developers together to learn the skills that are necessary to actually achieve the promise of Agile. So to learn some of the basic skills, to rehearse and practice some of the basic skills, as well as to work on the technical practices that come with delivering value, and then talk about the promise of Agile and how the teams can start integrating business decisions, and how the team can really start optimizing the value they deliver. So I think this is the only training class, only workshop that can say we're bringing leaders, leaders, product owners, project managers, team members together to focus on the promise of what we can actually deliver. So it's not, we're not going in and making all the promises of Agile and just delivering the basics. We are working, starting with the basics all the way up to the promise of Agile. And with all these people together, of course, sometimes the leaders will be focusing on things that are important to leaders. From a leadership perspective, what's important about adaptive planning and things like that. And that's why Diana and I are coming together, because Diana can work with the leaders on the things that are important to them, and I can take the developers and perhaps the Scrum Masters and product owners, depending where they fall, and work on how adaptive planning and those kind of things are important. But
I think
to stay split in our groups. We're going to come together and actually work together on challenges, because we're going to deliver. We're going to deliver a challenge. We're going to have product challenges, and we're actually going to deliver results in the workshop together.
Yeah. So I think one of the things about this is that's important to remember about the workshop is that it is also a fluency building workshop. So that we know that just sitting and hearing about a thing can give us some knowledge about it, but it doesn't necessarily give us any skills. And what Steve and I are really focusing on in this workshop is making sure people have much opportunity to practice on real problems and real skills in a collaborative kind of way, so that they're sort of really experiencing these different levels of fluency to the best we can simulate it in 3 days, and so they'll come away with a more hands-on understanding, and not just kind of an intellectual thinking about concepts, but a real grappling with what is it like to be on these different kinds of teams, and some way of understanding where they are right now in their home teams, and where they would like to be, and if they're already in a good fit, and that's great, or if they would like to move along further. So we want to make sure that this is a really deep practice and deliberate practice, and not just sort of intellectual, a lot of talking head kind of stuff. We don't do those kind of workshops.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's quite a challenge. We've set a huge challenge for ourselves to bring this much deliberate practice into 3 days. But then we realized we've got 3 days, and we want to cover 3 stars, and so we want to use what we've learned about how teams learn to be agile at different levels to help us structure the workshop. So we've got 3 days, 3 stars, which means the first day we're going to focus on the first star, focus on value. Second day we're going to work on delivering value, and the third day we're going to work on the promise of Agile. And we're going to let you discover the 4th star after the workshop. But we'll talk to you about it. We'll give you a preview of what we might look like.
Will it be an extra session for Star 4?
Not yet. Only about, it's something less than 5% of teams even want to be there. So it doesn't warrant us spending as much time there as we do on the others. So.
Yeah. It sounds promising. I'm looking forward to be a student or a participant.
Oh, yay. Yeah.
So we are very close to the end of our Hangouts, and if you would like to say your final words,
we will have to listen.
Yeah.
Well, like Steve said, I'm really looking forward to being in Istanbul and meeting everybody there and hearing your stories about your experiences on your Agile teams and how that might fit into the model, and how we can help. So I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for a really rich and creative time, and so I'm just very much looking forward to it. What about you, Steve?
Really the same. I'm really excited first about the opportunity just to go to Istanbul, and I'm really excited to having the conversations, like you said, to really get to meet a lot of people, hear the stories, and also work with you guys to figure out how we can do something great in Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
So, Diana and Steve, thank you very much for your time. We are very appreciated to have you at Agile Leaders Episode 9. And we hope to see you in Istanbul in May 13th to 15th.
Yeah.
Thank you again. This is the end of Agile Leaders Episode 9. We will announce the next event in the following days. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you, Baris.
Bye bye.